ancient documents from the time of Jesus. Texts so, well, so radical, they were silenced for 2,000 years. So the question is pretty simple. Why aren't they in the Bible?
Okay, so picture this. It's 1947. A young Bedouin shepherd is out scrambling across these rugged cliffs near the Dead Sea. He's not looking for treasure. He's looking for a lost goat. He spots a cave, chucks a rock in there, maybe to scare the goat out, but instead of an animal sound, he hears this crash, the unmistakable sound of pottery shattering. And what he found inside that cave? Well, it was about to change everything we thought we knew about history.
Because inside those shattered jars was basically a hidden library, perfectly preserved for 2,000 years. We're talking ancient scrolls written on parchment from the exact same time that Jesus was walking the earth. Which, of course, brings us right back to that huge question. If these things are so important, why have most of us never even read them? Why aren't they in the Bible?
I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. The scale of that silence. For almost 2 millennia, these documents, these voices were just gone, completely lost to the world. They were written, carefully hidden away, and then just nothing, not a whisper. Until, a strayed goat and a lucky throw changed absolutely everything.
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this mystery, we've got to start with the most basic question. Who even wrote these things? Figuring out who the authors were is really the first major clue to understanding why their entire library ended up buried in a cave.
So the leading theory is that the authors were a Jewish sect known as the Essenes. And let me tell you, these guys were not part of the mainstream. Think of it like this. On one side, you've got the establishment, right? The powerful priests who controlled the temple in Jerusalem. And on the other side, you've got the Essenes, this protest movement that basically said, nope, you're all corrupt. They were separatists. So you can probably imagine how the powers that be would feel about the writings of a group calling them out. They'd see it as a huge threat.
And that right there brings us to the heart of the matter. See, most people assume the Dead Sea Scrolls were, voted out of the Bible or something, rejected. But the real story is so much more interesting. This isn't a story about rejection at all. It's actually a story about preservation. To get this, you have to understand a key idea: canonization. It sounds fancy, but all it means is the process of deciding which books officially make it into the Bible. And here's the thing you have to remember. This didn't happen overnight. It took centuries, literally hundreds of years, for church leaders to get together, debate, and finally lock in the official list. They were looking for texts that spoke to the widest possible audience.
So that leads to the obvious question, right? During all these debates, during this whole canonization process, did the church leaders take a look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and just say, nah, not for us?
The answer is no. A simple and honestly a pretty surprising no. They weren't voted out because they were never even up for a vote. They couldn't be rejected because no one ever put them forward. This was the private, sacred library of one very specific community, the Essenes. It was their collection, and it was never meant for everybody else.
So why not? Well, because these scrolls weren't lost by some accident. They were hidden, deliberately. The Essenes took their most sacred texts and buried them in those caves to protect them, to keep them safe from the religious and political powers of the day, especially the Romans, who would have seen this stuff as straight-up rebellion and burned it all without a second thought. They chose to silence their own writings so they wouldn't be completely erased from history.
Okay, and this is where it gets really good. What was in these texts that was so dangerous it had to be buried? Well, what the scrolls give us is something incredible. A totally unfiltered snapshot of the world that Jesus himself was born into.
When you start reading them, the parallels to the New Testament are they're stunning. The scrolls talk all about a teacher of righteousness who is persecuted by a wicked priest. Does that sound familiar? It's a narrative that totally echoes the story of Jesus clashing with the temple authorities. They also talk about this huge cosmic war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. That is the exact same kind of language we see later in the Gospel of John.
So what does all this mean? It means the ideas in the New Testament didn't just pop up out of nowhere. The scrolls show us there was this whole culture already bubbling under the surface, a culture of protest, of rebellion, of people desperately expecting a Messiah to come and save them. It's like the quote says, the world Jesus was born into was already at a breaking point.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. What's the big takeaway here? What's the real ultimate significance of what that shepherd found? And why do these silenced stones still have so much to say to us today? Let's just be super clear about this. The Dead Sea Scrolls are not some kind of lost Bible or a secret chapter that got cut. They're a private library, the collection of one passionate spiritual group. But what they do is they throw open a window onto a world that was desperate for a change, a world that was actively waiting for a Messiah. And they only survived because they were hidden, a deliberate act to save them, creating this perfect time capsule. When we read them, we are hearing a direct, unfiltered voice from 2,000 years ago.
And that kind of leaves you with this final big thought, doesn't it? These incredible texts only survived because a small group of people went to incredible lengths to protect what they believed was true, to keep it from being erased by those in power. And it just makes you wonder, right? What other histories, what other silent stones are still out there